All right, then the goal today. Apply absolute value to inequalities, and or. Absolute value of -4. What did that mean to you? Did you see my fingers like jump onto the screen? They were there the whole time. It means the distance from 0 is 4. You missed it like in... It was like they jumped on there. Absolute value of x equals 3, then bumped it up a notch. That's the distance from x is 0. Then you moved on, and the distance from x is greater than or equal to 3. So, is that only one direction? If x is your center, let's hear it. Yeah, let's hear it. It sounded good from the start. If x is the center, and we are 3 greater than that away from it, do you agree that it starts there and goes this way only? Okay, I've got it equal also. This is x plus 3, so that 3 is bubbled in, so it also equals 3. Is that the only direction it can go? What would you do on this guy? Go back, think back. Grade school. X is the center. If you were exactly 3 units from the center, you would have a point at x plus 3, correct? Is that the only direction you can go? Because isn't the distance from x also 3 this way? So how do you then impose this learning to this learning? Except it's not just one point. It's not just equal to 3 this way and the distance equal to 3 this way. We also have the distance at 3, but what else? Goes down on the shading. So do you agree with me that from x to here is 3? You could count 1, 2, 3, correct? And the distance from here to here is 3. Do you agree? You could count the distance. 1, 2, 3. Do you have that? What is the difference between that and that? Ignore this for a minute. What is the difference between that and that? The greater than sign. It's saying you have to go a distance greater than 3 and you will find answers to the right. You have to go a distance greater than 3 to the left and then you'll find answers. It could also be exactly 3 from the center. What did I make the center? X. How about this guy? Absolute value of x is less than 2. What does that mean? The distance from x that the answers are contained is less than 2. How could you graphically represent that? Well, your center is x, and you have to stay within, is the word I would use. How much? Within what? 2. So if I went 2 this way, is it open or closed? If I go this way, is it open or closed? And how would I shade? Only in the middle. Why? Because from the center it has to be within 2. Does it include 2? And some of you right now are going, she is talking Greek. I don't know what she's talking about. And that's perfectly fine. But the people who can understand the theoretical need to try, okay? How far could you count from x and say you have gone? 2. How far this way could you count and say that you had gone? 2. Do you agree with at least that much, even if you have no idea how to do it? Okay. The center on all of those would really be 0, okay? So make sure you add that note to the side, that each of those really has a center at 0. Because in the next set, the center is going to change. The next set says absolute value of x minus 5 equals 7. The way you say that in words is the distance from x minus 5 is 7. when you get to absolute value equations and inequalities, do you agree we have discussed two cases in all the examples we've done so far? Two cases, going right so far and left so far. That does not change. When you get here, you write x minus 5 equals 7, and you write x minus 5 equals negative 7. What does the negative 7 account for? Going both directions, right? Here we went right 7. What are we going to do here? Count for left 7. Did I change anything inside the absolute value? What did I drop right here? What is dropped between the first one and the second one? The absolute value. Because once you go to case 1, case 2, that kicks the absolute value out of the problem. You've taken care of that. What is this answer, Lakin, right here? X equals what? Good. And what is the answer here, Hunter? Now let's look at that as a graph. You have a point at negative 2 and you have a point at 12. What in the world does that in any way relate to what we did right up here? What happened to the center? What did it move to? Why? What made it move to 5? That right there. Because x moved from a center of 0. And how do I know the center is 5? That would be negative 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I didn't have enough room for 11 and 12. How do you know? Because what is the center of negative 2 and 12? How would you find that? You do the mean average, and where is it? Where does the mean average tell you the new center is? I'll put a tick mark here so we will have enough. So your new center is at 5. Did we still go right 7 and left 7 to get the absolute value distance? Absolutely. Did we compare it to distance? Absolutely. Now, how does that compare to this guy? What's the difference between this example and this example? What is it? Right. It is going to account for that there's more than just a point answer and a point answer. There will be infinitely many answers, either so far away to start or within a certain distance. The question is this an and or an or problem? And that's the part we haven't talked about yet. If it is less than, that means x minus 5 must be less than or equal to 7 units from the center. That means it has to be an and problem. So what requires the and problem? Less than or equal to or less than. So if you have that, you are going to see a less than equal to or a less than. X minus 5 is less than or equal to 7. Then I use the word and. Again, x minus 5. This time I have to do two things. I have to account for the distance left 7, but also I must flip the sense of the inequality. What did I do in both cases with the absolute value? What did I do with the absolute value between the problem and starting actually working the problem? I ditched it. What did we do with the absolute value? We ditched it. So I do not want to see any absolute values in the work. Why? Because going from 1 combined to 2, either and or ors, takes care of what the absolute value stands for, that there's two problems, one going left, one going right. Some of them are within that distance, that's less than. What if it's greater than that distance? It's greater than. What would you get for the answer to the first one, Madeline? Good. What would you get for the second answer, Rachel? Perfect. Now, from yesterday, from the homework yesterday, that means we need a -2, a 0, and a 12. I do not make you make every single tick mark. X is less than or equal to 12 is a closed circle going this way because we're still sketching the answer. We're not sure totally what it is. X is greater than or equal to -2. So we have a closed circle at -2 going this way. What is the final answer? I have an and problem. Just the overlap, the shading they share. So what shading do they share, Hunter? Right here's my little sketch. He said between. That is perfect. Now what do I do with the endpoints, Britta? Filled in, correct, perfect. And your notation for intervals is -2, 12. What's wrong with the last example? Doesn't work, right. It says it's not possible because if you try to read this, the distance from X is -2. Why does that not make a lick of sense? We're not doing negative distance, correct? Now, are there some negative uses? Yes, especially in physics. However, we are not going to do that with absolute value. All right? So, a trick that could happen to you. Why is this possible? Why is this still possible? Because it says -2 times the absolute value of X is less than -4. And I just got done telling you that if the distance was negative, it was not possible. Then I turned around and said this one is possible. One person knows the answer. Anybody else? Both of you are warm. When you have an absolute value, you treat it like we did. Remember the first week of school we had that? And if there was something here, you had to get rid of it. You couldn't distribute it. Do you remember that? Because the squared was an exponent. And please excuse my dear Aunt Sally says you always have to do exponents or parentheses before this. And some people messed up for just a couple of lessons and distributed that until they got that straight. You can't, as we read this now. The only choice you have is to isolate the absolute value. How can you isolate the absolute value? I heard it, yes. And I think that's what Wes said, was to divide by -2. Those will cancel and you have a problem that I'm afraid always that students will forget. When you divide by a negative, what happens to less than? Changes to greater than. And -4 divided by -2 is what? Greater than 2. Is that possible? Is that doable? What do you think? Then it is, yes, because you would say the distance from the center X has to be greater than 2. So it'd start at 2 and get bigger. It'd go to -2 and get smaller. All the answers would be not next to X. They would be farther away. That's what greater than means. You're going to have to go greater than that distance to find true answers. Okay?